The Podski with Johnny Bake Show. For over 2 years, the revolutionary force in audio entertainment.
Oh, yeah!
Brother,
Let me talk to you! Freak out, freak out!
I just had an out-of-body experience!
Insane in the membrane!
Brother!
Yeah! And I'm here for only one reason, and that's to take it to the limit, yeah!
Somebody stop the damn man!
I'm living on the edge.
Who is your daddy?
Hello and welcome to the Podski. I'm your host, Johnny Bake Show, and ringside with me is Teddy Mongoose. Today we start year 3 of the Podski, and we are reviewing Chris Jericho's debut on Monday Night Raw. It took place August 9th, 1999. Let us know in the comments if you remember when this happened and if you think this is the greatest WWE debut in history, because I personally feel like it is. But let us know in the comments what you think. I'm super fired up for this because we are on the Summerslam tour here. We have SummerSlam 04 next week. The week after, we have SummerSlam 99. We also have the Scott Hall show. It is coming up as well. So please continue to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out and helps the channel grow. But Teddy, I am so excited to cover this with you because it's the countdown to the millennium. We left off in 1999 with Fully Loaded. So listeners, please go check that out. It is in the archives. It's in the playlist in the description. If you're new here to the Podski, we have playlists for our 2 big topics that we cover. We cover 99 and 2004. So we cover these 2 because there's 5 years difference, and there's a lot of things that are different in 99 than there are in 2004. There's literally a war going on, and 5 years later, there's no competition. So we tag all of that stuff in the description, so check that out. Check out the channel because we got a lot of great content on there for you. But Teddy, welcome in, because I'm jittery for this show. I'm so excited to talk about this. What you got lined up for us this week on the fallout of Fully Loaded?
In the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. All right, we'll get there in a minute, but it's Y2J Day. And because it's Y2J Day, we would be remiss in not starting off with the announcement of his signing.
That's actually perfect, because we got a note that we've been talking about Jericho here on the pod since like March. And so go back and check out the archives. We started in the WrestleMania 15 show, and that's whenever we realized that it was becoming apparent that he was going to be leaving WCW.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of John, we've only talked about WCW as competition. So we brought them up as how are they doing in ratings compared to, or if somebody looks to be jumping ship. Again, we talked about the big show coming over in the Mania show, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the Jericho rumors there. And so we weren't really diving into WCW storylines. That all being said, we weren't really talking about what Jericho was doing at the end of his WCW run. And we're going to wind the clock back a little bit here, because the writing was on the wall that he was out, leaving WCW, even for less guaranteed money. So we wind the clock back on our timeline just a little bit. So we left off at Fully Loaded, which was July 25th, 99, somewhere in around there. And this would have been from the July 12th, 99 Observer newsletter. So Dave Meltzer says, quote, "In what was a huge signing, not only for its long-term repercussions, but for what message it sends short-term about the future of both respective major U.S. organizations, Chris Jericho inked a 3-year deal with Titan Sports on June 30th. Jericho, whose WCW contract expires on July 27th, technically has a 90-day non-compete clause in his WCW contract, but those non-compete clauses haven't been enforced in the past, examples being Steve Regal and Paul White, because of the question as to whether they would stand up in court and is expected to debut on WWF television in some form immediately after the contract expires. Before I continue, how crazy is that they were scared to do non-competes then? And now you have guys tweeting all the time, oh, brother, non-compete's up in 74 days.
Yeah. That is really crazy. That like a sign of the times, man.
Well, and not only that, it was just Jerry McDivitt had 25 more years to figure out how to beat up people in the courtroom.
Yeah. Literally put him in a sharpshooter in the courtroom.
Absolutely. So Dave finishes out by saying, Titan immediately announced the signing on its website. Jericho still has a handful of house show dates remaining with WCW, but unless plans change, is not expected to appear on any telecasts per order of Eric Bischoff, who had made the decision not to use him on television until and unless he signed months ago.
That's a nugget right there.
We got more, baby. You just wait.
We got to tip our hat to JR here because the Observer wrote, Ross made his number one personnel project in 1999 to sign Chris Jericho. And in case you're wondering, Paul White or The Big Show, he had already verbally agreed over a year ago. And at this point, so even though he debuted in 99, he agreed in 98.
And we covered that in the archives. And do not forget, the conduit for the deal originally was a bushwhacker.
Can't believe that a bushwhacker was. I can't believe he brokered the deal.
It's so good, man.
It really is. And another cool bit of info, Dave reports that the only equal or close to second to Jericho would have been Chris Benoit, who actually re-signed with WCW earlier in 99.
So Jericho's 28 at the time, and Meltzer wrote that, especially after all of his microphone work in 98, he is, quote, almost an unquestioned top player for the future, end quote. Meltzer said that he has all the main characteristics to get over, with the exception of size for Titan, like, you know, with the land of the giants. Yep. But although he's shorter than Michaels, he's physically heavier, and those two have been the most common comparisons. Dave said, quote, Irvine is a totally different performer. He's not in Michaels' league in the ring, nor are all but a handful in the history of the industry. He's considerably funnier and better on the mic, although Michaels made up for that with stage presence and his ability to have, on occasion, unbelievable matches, end quote. The crazy thing here, though, is that Dave says about him not being Shawn in the ring, which he's not here, but his match quality at this point in time is actually like underrated, especially from fandom. People know him as this big personality, funny. They think of the original 1001 Holds, Ralphus, all of that. But this guy, according to Observer ratings, between 1996 and 1999, was in the top 10 among North American wrestlers in pay-per-view match quality. Only Rey Mysterio, Ultimo Dragon, and Eddie Guerrero finished ahead of him in all 3 years in number of high-rated star matches. And out of 2 of those 3 years, Michaels, Malenko, Benoit, Bret Hart, and Mick Foley are the only ones that finished ahead of them in 2 out of the 3 years.
Which is completely insane company to be in. And it's even crazier that we're talking about this in our 99 shows. And when we fast forward to 2004, everyone we're mentioning here is literally the stars of the show. They're the ones top of the company.
Yep. It's wild, man. And even crazier here is that we just mentioned all of these Hall of Fame level workers. And Jericho's last TV program was a loser wears a dress match with Perry Saturn. And then he was off TV after that. And we'll get to that later.
Yeah. And we also got to note that in 98, Jericho was 3rd in the Observer Awards, best on interviews, and 5th for most charismatic. Meltzer also said that losing Jericho will likely end up similar to Austin as being one of the black marks on Bischoff's managerial career.
Especially after the thing that put the nail in the Jericho coffin with WCW was his program idea with Goldberg got nixed. So it totally soured him. And that was basically Big Kev and some of the guys got in Goldberg's ear and were like, you can't be working with this, undersized punk. And then, Goldberg said, no way, I'm not going to do it. And Eazy-E said, okay, cool with me. And, so that really soured him. So yes, he's going to lose another one. He being ATM Eric.
The Observer also reported that the company almost made the decision easier for him to go, as other talent had expiring contracts and they were given pushes and programs. That wasn't the case with Jericho. He also wasn't happy with how his two best friends, Benoit and Malenko, were treated. Like, they were promised big pushes if they were re-signed, and it literally never happened. So many promises that management made to him about pushes in the future were falling on deaf ears.
Yeah, and basically what you had here is, I think he at least wanted to be courted. So even though he saw them promise stuff to his buddies that didn't come to fruition, everybody wants to be wanted, right?
Right.
And if you didn't even get to the stage where they're pitching ideas for you, that was where I think he really was starting to say, okay, enough is enough here.
Like, they literally, literally, they don't care about me even enough that they're not even going to try to pitch me. They just want to send me home until I sign something.
And here's the crazy thing. Isn't this literally a mirror of why he ended up going to AEW?
Literally, yeah, it's true. The same reason he got there was the same reason that he left.
And because he had said all those years, I'm never going to work in anyone for North America but Vince. And then he came up with what he thought him and KO was this like main event level program. And they put all that time into it. And those guys were the second match on the card. And it's not like they wouldn't have paid him buku dollars, but the story there is that Vince said, hey, Vince, I want to talk to these guys and I'm going to check this out. And Vince said, oh yeah, go ahead. And then he went and signed and went to go. He said, Vince, I'm going to sign. He goes, oh, Chris, that's a lot of money. You better do it. And then he signed and he was like, hey, whatever they did, I'll double it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he had buyer's regret way later, but yeah, it's the same kind of deal is that like this dude multiple times in his career, again, you want to be wanted. You want to feel like you're a valuable asset. And I can't blame him for that.
Yeah, absolutely not.
In today's hashtag, That's So WCW, Meltzer writes, quote, in recent months, his name was ordered, never talked about on television, and signs fans brought to television tapings with his name on them were confiscated. Despite that, even up to the last several days before the contract signing with WWF, WCW officials were hopeful that they were still in the hunt, and even Jericho professed not to have completely made up his mind with the WCW's actions and directions, combined with Ross and Titans pursuing him hard, if anything, seemingly making him lean toward WWF. Several WCW wrestlers noted that the company had offered huge raises and big contracts to newcomers and celebrities, but did not come forth with the offer Jericho couldn't have afforded to turn down, and therefore they lost him. And the crazy thing is, dude, is that even at the very end, only working on house shows, he wouldn't say I'm leaving yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like all they had to do was just put some effort into it. And it sounds like Jericho might not have left.
And I would assume at this point in time, the reason for that being Eddie, Benoit, and Malenko.
For sure. It would have been like a radical situation.
Yeah. We will stay together. You know, you guys re-upped. If they show me the money, I'll stay with you. And they didn't show him the money. And I think that that's why he didn't slam the door. And then also, and this is just purely Mongoose speculates, this also could have been to protect his friends from getting buried too while he was still there.
Well, yeah, that's true too. If he made a big stink about it, they probably would have buried Eddie and Malenko and Saturn and all them too, just because of having the association with Jericho. That makes total sense too.
There we go. I think I'm going to sniff that one out.
Meltzer reports all that is known about Jericho's contract with the WWF is that it's very heavily incentive based. It has a lower downside guarantee, but has a higher potential if he gets a strong push, which we hear that all the time with WWF contracts back in the day. You got a low downside, but you get a strong push, you get main event push, then you're going to make buku money.
Bro, my favorite thing was because Bruce never talked money, but him literally saying, yeah, we'd give $100 if you worked a TV.
Yeah.
So you're guaranteed to make $5,200 a year. And like basically everything else is just the size of the house and your merchandise or whatever.
Right. Like, come on. Like, but Dave also says it is believed that WCW's offer was only in the $425,000 to $500,000 per year range. And that's far from the superstar money at the time.
Yeah. I mean, multiple people are making over $1 million per year. Right. And the thing is with that company, and this has been the story. We actually talked about this a little bit in Bash of the Beach 94. But in WCW, because those contracts were all guaranteed money without the big escalators, you were pushed according to your deal. They weren't going to push you if you weren't making superstar money. And that wasn't superstar money. And so the writing was sort of on the wall there. Look, man, nobody's sneezing at $425,000 to $500,000 in 1999.
Hello.
But when there's a possibility of making double that,
right,
and you're somebody as talented as Jericho, you're going to bet on yourself, man. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And the other side of the story here, which we talked about earlier in the year, is that Bischoff thought he had the verbal agreement with Jericho. And when Jericho didn't sign, he was basically done with wanting to negotiate seriously or even to try to even get in a bidding war with WWE.
And this week's Dave the Soothsayer segment, drop on that Meltzer with the crystal ball. Dave is quoted, direct quote here from the July Observer that we are quoting from. The failure to negotiate could, quote, turn out to be a key story 5 years from now when the final chapter is written about the period WCW actually was, for a short term, the global leader in the industry, only to piss it all away by lack of management foresight, end quote.
Like they literally folded less than 2 years after this was written. He didn't even make it 5 years. We're literally talking about everybody that Bischoff wouldn't push is now the top of WWE. They're literally headlining WrestleMania and Bischoff is an on-TV GM.
So think about this. Think about this, man. Jericho was part of WCW's 1996 signing class. Okay. That's the year the NWO was formed.
Right.
So you formed the NWO, and that year they signed Jericho, La Parka, Hoovy Juice, Psychosis, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and others. And literally 3 years later, none of them got any kind of main event push.
That kind of class is literally like the John Cena, Batista, Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton was in the OVW signing that JR put together. Like that is that good.
And here's where I would say, John, I actually think it's better because those guys were brand new to this market.
Yeah.
And so like they would have been able to break in and really break out.
Right. Yes, that's a great point. That's a great point because, yeah, all of these guys were overseas or in different markets completely like they would have never been seen. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, it's something else, man. They had so much more seasoning. There was no John Cena is lazy on house shows or whatever those reports that we were getting before. There is no Dave Batista worked a negative 2-star match on a pay-per-view. You know what I'm saying? Like there was none of that with these guys. They were all literally ready. They needed seasoning on television. And the problem is that, and look, man, the WCW grew and grew and grew and grew. But while it was on the back of Hogan, Sting, Uncle Kev, Scott Hall, all those guys, nobody else was really getting created underneath. And the guys that were had a literal glass ceiling put upon them. And the only one close was Goldberg. And the problem with Goldberg is that he ended up in the whole mess with all those guys that we just said, you know, they didn't make anybody but him. And then by the time they figured out they needed to, it was too late.
That's so true. But to follow up the signing announcement, the July 1999 Wrestling Observer, Dave writes, the Millennium Countdown on Raw actually ends on August 9th, which apparently also coincides with the debut of Chris Jericho. So he may be billed as something like the man of the new millennium.
to piggyback off of that, from the July 26th Observer newsletter, there has been some talk of Jericho working with X-Pac early in his tenure, although there have been many different ideas for debuting Jericho, and all of these have been batted around. And dude, I remember whenever he signed, reading on lordsofpain.net and other sites that I was on about Jericho joining DX, and I was so all about it. Like, dude, I'm 14 years old. So, of course, I think DX is the coolest thing in the history of things at that point in time. And Hunter just left the group. So to me, I'm thinking, oh, their head guy left.
Yeah.
So that this new guy comes in, because it felt like Pac and Road Dogg needed a new lead man. Like, they're great second bananas.
Yeah.
And so I can remember on the computer being like, Jericho is going to be the new head of DX. He's going to be the new man that's going to take over DX. And in retrospect, like, obviously it was best for everybody that it didn't happen, especially best for Jericho. It could maybe not have been best for Road Dogg and X-Pac. But dude, I just remember thinking like, oh my God, this would be like if A-Rod signed with the Yankees. And that actually, did end up happening later on, which is hilarious. Like, it would have been that kind of a monumental shift where you have this super prospect that goes to this super team. Right. And that was literally where they were at that point in time. And yeah, it's funny to think about what could have been. But in this case, we just talked about the idea batted around of Hogan and Flair being a babyface tag team. That would have been cool. This could have been huge, but Jericho would have been DX. The same way that DX kind of killed X-Pac and Road Dogg.
Right, because they were DX.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Hunter had to completely disassociate from all of them to get to the next level, which is interesting.
It is. So Chris Jericho's final WCW match was on July 21st in Peoria, Illinois, in a tag match teaming with Eddie Guerrero against Kidman and Rey Mysterio Jr. People who contacted the Observer for the report said it was 4+ stars. Before the match started, Jericho said that if he got pinned, he would leave WCW. Mysterio then said everyone already knew this was his last night in WCW. The match itself went over 24 minutes, every element of drama, building, and a great climax. The finish had Eddie frog splashing Jericho after the two were having issues with each other throughout the match, and Jericho eating the pin. Mysterio then tipped his hat to Jericho, and all four hugged in the ring. Jericho was said to be in near tears, and Kidman said over the mic that he was going to miss Jericho. Mysterio then started a Jericho chant. Jericho finished out by saying he was overwhelmed at the response that he was getting, but he still thinks Peoria sucks. Just such a classic Jericho move.
Is that not how you stick the landing or what?
It really is.
And the thing is, it's an excellent send-off, especially with those guys. Like, because he was in Mexico with Ray, and he was obviously, we talked Eddie. And speaking of Eddie, please check out our Eddie bonus episode. We go in, we quote Jericho saying that basically his biggest regret in his career was not getting a real tag team run with Eddie. That's a really neat sort of layer to that. And the fact that his last match happened to be one with him teaming with Eddie is really, really cool. But to get back on track, we left Fully Loaded with Austin beating The Undertaker for the title. Vince is supposed to be gone from TV. So now, John, to go back to where we were at the intro of the show, I'm going to pass it to you, brother. What happens the night after Fully Loaded 99?
This Raw is War starts with The Undertaker beating up X-Pac backstage after Pac did a run-in on his match with Austin the night before. The beating goes on out into the ring, and Road Dogg tries to go for the save, and Undertaker chokeslams him. Kane then runs in for the save, and Big Show attacks Kane. We're going to see this a lot. Jeez. Vince arrives in a limo, and during the break, Kane carries X-Pac to the back and puts him in an ambulance.
Dude, he carried him the way that a prince carries a Disney princess. Do you know what I mean? Like X-Pac was this just like this dead fish that Kane was going to take to the back, and instead of kissing him and reviving him, throws him in an ambulance and just slaps the back of the door. We're good to go to the hospital.
What a visual. Visual. The Acolytes beat Edge and Christian to retain the tag belts after Gangrel abducted Christian. Edge eats the double team powerbomb. The best part of this match was Hardcore Holly was the special guest ring announcer, and after the match, Holly says, "Your winner, me, the big shot Bob Holly." Holly is immediately beaten into a pulp by the Acolytes until he's saved by Kane, who cleans house.
All right, listen, dude, I despise Bob Holly, except I love Bob Holly. Like, that's the problem.
Our asses are worn out with Bob Holly, but like this just pops us every time.
This is the best Bob Holly. Him, John, he walks out there for no reason.
Yeah.
And he says, coming to the ring, weighing at 298 pounds. Bradshaw and Farouk, like, all that. And then, okay, sits down. And then after the match, doesn't get involved, dude. He doesn't swing a chair. He doesn't throw a punch. He picks the microphone up and goes, and the winner of the match, me, big shot Bob Holly. And then he just gets beaten mercilessly.
What the hell? Who is letting him do this?
Whoever it is, book everything.
It's probably Bruce.
It actually probably is.
But the segment ends with Kane grabbing the mic, using his little voice box, and he challenges Undertaker and Big Show.
Undertaker, Big Show, you hurt Sean. I'm gonna hurt you.
Thank you, Fake Limited Kane, for that one.
Dude, my face was as red as his with the mask on while I was doing that, squeezing the voice box.
Steve Blackman runs over Ken Shamrock with a car.
I'm dead.
How about
I'm dead. That was it. Next segment, Steve Blackman runs over Ken Shamrock with a car. Next scene.
Just keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
So Vince then comes out, cuts a promo saying that he's always kept his promises, and then says, "For the first time in my life, I've failed." Oh my gosh.
Perfect, dude. Perfect.
I don't even know what to say after that. Austin comes out, and after Vince extends his hand, Austin cuts the most vintage Austin promo ever, calls JR to the ring. He leads the na 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 na, hey, goodbye. But
you got to remember, but it changed. It was the, oh, hell yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Vince then turns, gives the crowd the double birds, and Austin and Ross toast a couple of Steve Weisers.
Dude, the best part here then is that McMahon's out of his limo and gets stopped by Howard Finkel, who's crying, okay? He's upset. Yeah. And he says, like, "I love you, Vince. I'm going to miss you." And Vince literally turns and says, "Get the hell out of here." And then that's it.
That's probably what he told him every morning whenever he was getting the house show report, too.
Seriously, probably it.
Triple H and Chyna do a promo and call out The Rock. Mr. Ass attacks Rocky with a club, and Chyna gives him a low blow. The Rock then challenged Billy Gunn and Chyna to a handicap match. Kane beat Big Show and Undertaker in a short match via DQ after Undertaker hit Kane with 2 chair shots to the head. They then did a segment with Jeff Jarrett and Ben Stiller. Yes,
didn't have that on your bingo card, did you, people?
Yeah, Ben Stiller was on WWF Raw in 1999. Jarrett asked Stiller who his favorite wrestler was, and he said he had 2, the puppies.
That's so 1999.
So 99, man. Jarrett then beat him up and put him in the figure 4. D'Lo made the save, hitting Jarrett with the lowdown and carried out Stiller.
And for the second time in the show, we had a man carry another man out like Prince Charming does. It does Sleeping Beauty or whatever.
The main event of this show had The Rock versus Mr. Ass in Chyna. Triple H was on commentary, interfered in the match, and also belted JR. Austin then showed up, attacked Hunter, with the two brawling on the outside while The Rock hit rock bottoms in the ring, and the show went off the air as The Rock was about to give Billy Gunn the people's elbow. So we didn't even get a finish to the main event.
Correct. We assumed that The Rock won, but we have no idea. For all we know, that match is still going on.
They're still battling it out, man.
Coming off the heels of the fully loaded pay-per-view and paced by the most watched match head-to-head in the history of the Monday Night Wars, the 726 Raw show nearly achieved its highest rating ever in a head-to-head position. The handicap match with Kane versus The Big Show and Undertaker pulled a record-setting 7.81 quarter hour and 5.938 million homes, breaking the opposed audience record set just last week with The Undertaker versus Triple H, and that match did a 7.70. Raw drew a 7.77 quarter earlier in the show for the Austin final confrontation with McMahon. Those two quarters combined with the 7.52 overrun, which included a little more than 1 minute unopposed, so it's really closer to a 7.2 head-to-head for that Rock handicap match, put this Raw show at a 7.11 overall rating, 6.91 first hour, 7.30 second hour, and an 11.6 share. Remember, folks, 7.11 is the percentage of houses that have TV. 11.16 is the percentage of people watching TV at that time. The overall rating trailed only one unopposed show, which did an 8.09, and the record opposed show, 524 day after the death of Owen Hart show, which did a 7.14. While the McMahon interview on that show did a 7.7 quarter, the minute by minute actually peaked at a 9.0.
We now move on to a really interesting story from the August 2nd, 1999 Observer newsletter. The July 27th, 1999 off the record interview with Vince aired. With an interview with Vince and Linda scheduled to air on July 28th and one with Shane and Stephanie scheduled for August 3rd.
So they layered in McMahon's here. Vince first, Vince and Linda second, the kids third.
Meltzer credited the interviewer saying that he did anything but a puff piece interview, and he challenged Vince on every topic. The interviewer even said that he felt Jesse Ventura disgraced his political office by participating in SummerSlam, and told Vince that there needs to be guidelines and responsibility with his product. Vince defended continuing with the Over the Edge show after Owen's death and said no one in the company even thought about stopping the show. He even said he meant no disrespect, and the interviewer did remind him that Owen's family felt very differently. Vince wouldn't answer the question when he was asked if he would do it again.
And so Vince basically pulls the Ricky Bobby, I said with all due respect.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But he said the opposite here. Yeah.
Regarding not announcing Owen's death at the show, Vince said it didn't seem fair to the live audience. And regarding Vince's meeting with Brett, Vince said he met with Brett out of respect for Owen and said Brett carried the whole conversation. He said Brett only mentioned Owen once.
Yeah, this was really slimy, basically intimating that Brett didn't care as much about Owen. And the direct quote here was, and this was Vince's words, quote, "I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He said I ruined his marriage. I ruined his career. All he wanted to do was talk about himself. It was like looking into the eyes of a skeleton. He wasn't human. It was a very weird experience," end quote. Which, look, man, I can actually get into Brett only talking about himself, but I think that it's really underhanded to basically insinuate that he didn't care about his brother passing.
Right.
So Meltzer did say that the whole meeting situation was a mess, especially with the divide between Vince and Brett only getting bigger since Montreal because of issues with Carl DeMarco's ineffectiveness as an intermediary between the two. And DeMarco was the president of WWF Canada, who wanted a good relationship with Bret in the WWF. And he was also Bret's personal manager before that. So he and Bret had a history. And apparently this guy didn't do a good job towing the line.
Yeah. And there was an awkward situation where Vince was asked about the whole crew going to Owen's funeral, but no one in the company going to Pillman's. Vince said that it was an entirely different set of circumstances and basically insinuated that Melanie didn't care about all the wrestlers attending. Regarding Owen's funeral, he said he felt that it was his duty to be there and that Martha asked him to be there and that he wanted to be there. So to wrap up the funeral cost controversy that we talked about previously in our other shows, go check those out, especially the Over the Edge show.
And then King of the Ring after that. That was the follow-up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of those shows, go back and listen because we have a lot of follow-up on Owen after that. McMahon said Martha wanted a very lavish funeral, although the family said she wanted a small private funeral with any wrestlers who wanted to attend. He was willing to pay for it, and he sent a deposit check as well as a blank check to the funeral home, but Martha paid for quote unquote part of it, which he said was on the advice of her lawyers.
And Vince actually had an itemized breakdown of the $152,000 that he spent. It didn't have the funeral itself, but it did have all of the costs that were around it. So lodging, transportation there, busing to and from the venue, clothes, sunglasses, hair and makeup, like all those things. So Vince literally did take care of everybody that wanted to go. And the controversy here is Vince said, I paid for the funeral. And Martha said, you didn't. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is just it's ugly, dude. It's just an ugly thing.
Yeah. And Vince went on to basically say that no matter what, he was going to be looked at as the bad guy. And as we've said before, instead of us, rehashing all of the nuances here, go check out the Over the Edge and the King of the Ring show that we mentioned before. They're on the archives. Go check it out. We'll link it in the description below as well, and the 99 playlist too. And especially the Observer as well and the Dark Side of the Ring. They have there's so many good references out there. Please go check those out. And also let us know in the comments what you think about the way Vince handled this Owen situation, because this is dirty, grimy stuff that we're going through now.
Yeah, it is. It's uncomfortable, man. So to turn over some other notes regarding those interviews with Vince and Linda on the show, they were saying that they weren't in the wrestling business. They were in the entertainment business. They were then asked why wrestling was in the name. And then Vince gives this wild answer. And Linda said that it was for brand recognition. They also talked about the Sable lawsuit. And then there was other things, including workers believing too much in their own persona, like Bret Hart and Sonny. They then were asked, is Sable one of those? Vince said, I won't talk about Sable. I can't talk about Sable in that way. And then Linda talked about never getting involved in creative. They talked about their roles and the roles of their children getting involved in the product. And John actually has several of these clips already posted on the YouTube shorts. Check them out. You can hear the words straight from the horse's mouth. It's weird, kind of, and fascinating.
It's weird to see Vince and Linda, like the dynamic between them together. And especially whenever the way that Vince says that Stephanie isn't built like Deborah, it's weird. It's weird, man. It's the heebie-jeebies.
Right. And I guess it's also very authentic. In a weird way, because that's how he's going to look at people and women, especially, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something else.
And
yes.
Oh, child. It's just weird, man. But go check out the shorts. They're all on there, and it's a weird interview. We'll even link I'm sure I can find the interviews. We'll link them in the description below too. So we'll pivot off the record and go back to Jericho. He did an interview over the weekend, and he said he would not be the one behind GTV, which we have not talked about GTV a lot here on the show because we probably can't really talk about some of the stuff they do on those things.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that it ends up never having a payoff, and everything that they do and show on there, I don't mean to be a fuddy-duddy, but it's gross. There's no reason to talk about it.
Yeah. But he also says that he wouldn't be in DX, but he didn't say that he was not going to be the Millennium Man. He said WCW might be the place for him in a few years, but it isn't now. He said if he was running WCW, he'd book Benoit versus Hogan for the title next week and put Benoit over since Benoit is ready for the spot. He noted his WWF contract doesn't have as much guaranteed money as his WCW offer did, but the WWF has a higher earning potential, the downside guarantee and the incentives. He also said he first started considering leaving when his bookers canceled his program with Goldberg, which we mentioned earlier as well.
Yep. There's a million things going on right now. So here's going to be our first little hit of rapid fire stories. So the WWF is now acknowledging publicly that Ken Shamrock is going to be leaving and going back to the UFC. With Goldust gone, there's talk that GTV's behind the camera person is going to be Terry Runnels. The funny thing with this is that Terry Runnels was one of the people caught unsuspectingly on camera by GTV. So whatever, at that point in time, though, people have the attention spans like flies when it comes to wrestling shows. So who cares? Mark Canterbury and Savio Vega's contracts won't be renewed. So thanks for the memories, Henry O. Godwin and Quang. We'll miss you both. Appreciate both of you guys. New gen forever. The Road Dogg signed a 5-year extension. Deborah does an online chat where she confirmed that she's dating Steve Austin. Mick Foley, during his time off, had finished his autobiography, and while it's said to be out in December, he's looking at it being out in October and hoping to get, quote, blood and sweat socks, end quote, as the title for the book.
That is a very interesting title.
Yeah. Yep. It ends up being Have a Nice Day. If people don't know, this is the first one. Yeah, this is the first one. And Blood and Sweat Socks was the original title. And speaking of original titles that didn't make it, the movie Hitting the Mat, largely based around Mick Foley, Jake Roberts, and Terry Funk, is expected to be released in October. Originally, it was supposed to be a look behind the scenes of the business, but now that everything's so exposed, it has pivoted to be more about the lives of these wrestlers in particular. Meltzer writes, quote, a few weeks back, they were at Foley's house and he saw the film of his 2 kids watching the Royal Rumble finish with the 11 wicked chair shots to the head. And he had never seen their reaction to it before, and he was stunned, end quote.
So is this Beyond the Mat? Is this the working title for that?
Correct.
Okay.
The working title is Hitting the Mat. And again, it's supposed to be an expose. This is what goes on. And by the time pre-production to them, like sort of rapping happened,
yeah,
all of the Brett stuff came out. Like the business was exposed.
Yeah. Oh, we're wrestling with shadows is what you're talking about there too. Okay. Yeah. So
correct.
You're right. Everything is fully exposed here.
Yep. And so that was what totally changed the game there. Yeah. So we are a week away from Jericho's debut. But before we go to Raw, are you ready for some heat?
I'm ready for the heat check. Give us the heat notes.
So just a few here. The Undertaker, Big Show, and Paul Bearer are all together. So Vince is gone. So apparently there's no more corporate ministry. So that one's scrapped. We now have the Acolytes challenging the Undertaker and Big Show to a tag title match tonight. And then Undertaker challenges Austin to a world title match tomorrow on Raw. The Acolytes beat the Big Show and Taker when Taker laid out Bradshaw and Farouk with a chair. Hardcore Holly then comes out and attacks the Acolytes.
Big shot, Bob.
This then caused the Taker to start to go after Holly, but the Big Show cuts him off. All right, so he's showing a little compassion for our man here. The Hardys also wrestled Funaki and Papi Chulo, and T.S. Hayes was yelling at them throughout, and he got really hot when Jeff did a Freebird strut. And so I know there's something going on.
But Dave loved this match. He actually said the Hardy Boys had an awesome television match this weekend on Heat against Sho Funaki and Papi Chulo. I love the fact that Funaki was getting a run here in 99.
Oh, yeah, dude.
SmackDown #1 announcer. It was probably the best WWF TV match in a long time, even with the match being the Hardys against two guys they don't care about. The fans recognized it and it got over huge.
There you go, man. So Hardy Boy heat in a good way, like fan reaction coming around. And then we got that PS turn, baby. So heat's where the workers come to work, man. So we go to you now, John, for the August 2nd Raw. This is our Jericho debut, go home Raw show. What you got?
Yes, the August 2nd, 1999 Raw is War opens with the Acolytes challenging Undertaker and Big Show to a rematch. Big Shot Bob comes out and said the Undertaker and Show didn't show up yet, so he's challenging them to a handicap match. Holly is then murdered with power bombs.
Tell me a better story right now.
There is none.
This is better. This is better than Austin is the champion and Vince is off of TV.
Dude, bring Holly back for a run right now.
The bad thing is he'd do it.
He would.
Yeah, don't speak it into existence, man.
It's too late. I already said it. Edge beat Gangrel in a bloodbath match. Gangrel hit a DDT, went to get a bucket of blood. The lights go out and Gangrel is covered while Edge and Christian hugged. The both of them then leave together.
So we have the reuniting of the brothers.
Oh, and we got a big one coming up with those guys later in the year too. Test says he will destroy the Mean Street Posse to get to Shane. D'Lo wins the IC belt from Jeff Jarrett in a title versus title match. Deborah tried to distract, but D'Lo didn't care. He hit Jarrett with the belt and got the pin. Undertaker and Big Show beat Road Dogg and Kane after Taker hit a tombstone on Kane for the pin. The Acolytes come down, jumped by Bob Holly, who baseball bat.
Big Bat Bob.
Yeah, Big Bat Bob. Test then destroyed Rodney, and the main event was Austin versus Undertaker. Triple H came out to stop the match, saying he was the one who deserves the next title match. Austin jumps him. There's a huge pull apart, and the show goes off the air.
So Meltzer reported this week that the plan was for Jesse Ventura to do live angles at Raw tapings on August 9th. The live show, and then August 10th, the tape show, which were in Chicago and Milwaukee. Remember, the governor is in Minnesota at the time, so these are supposed to be quick travels. He said that SummerSlam was on his day off and that he wouldn't miss any work time for wrestling. He would need to fly out after 5 p.m. each weeknight if he's to work the weekly TVs. And he was on Meet the Press on July 25th, and Dave said that this wasn't one of his best outings, which is surprising because Jesse got elected literally by handling himself really well on camera and in front of the audience. Like that was how it happened. But especially about wrestling, Dave basically described him as getting really defensive. And whenever money was brought up, that really sort of made him squeamish as well. Apparently there was an article written that said that he sold out the office of the governor for $1 million. And that sort of goes back to that off the record that you had mentioned, where they basically said that he was being disrespectful to the office of the governorship by him being on the show, because at this point in time, wrestling's rotten and raunchy and, just crude.
I also wonder too, if him getting so defensive about wrestling is just like the boys hang like, hey man, like you can't let him talk shit about us like that on TV like that anymore. Like you feel like he might have had a little bit of that in him there.
So here's where the reason I say no is that he just won that huge $800,000 lawsuit a few months before this.
It's true. And he came
correct. And so because of that, I think that he's trying to defend himself from being someone that looks like he'll do anything for the money when he was just elected on being, you can't buy me.
Okay. That's true. Okay.
Yeah. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think, that he's looking out for number one way more than he's looking out for the guys backstage.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes a lot more sense too. But we're now at the week of our main event. But before we get there, we got a little bit of news and notes from the August 9th Wrestling Observer. The Kansas City Police Department's criminal investigation into the death of Owen Hart was completed without any charges being filed. According to a story carried nationally by the Associated Press, Jackson County prosecutors said that on July 30th, there was no basis for involuntary manslaughter charge against the rigging coordinator. There was no basis for an involuntary manslaughter charge against the rigging coordinator. Such a charge requires there be a substantial and unjustifiable risk of death, that the risk was disregarded, and that the disregard was a gross deviation from what a reasonable person would do under the circumstances. The legal team that is representing the Hart family in the wrongful death suit released a statement that said criminal and civil matters are separate. The WWF released a statement that the decision supported the WWF's belief that Owen's death was an accident. The WWF is also in the process of signing ECW tag team The Dudley Boys alongside with Stevie Richards. Richards was initially discussed as being brought in as a part of DX. Whoa, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that he had a bad neck, and Russo had been interested in the Dudleys for months. The Dudleys had been earning $600 a piece per show with ECW, and did go to Heyman after getting the WWF offer to see if he could give them a raise and stay, and he didn't offer a raise, which is said to have surprised them and suggested that they take the WWF offer.
Goes back to what we say, man. Creative genius, bad business person. But even in this sense, he was good enough to say, look, I can't do it.
Yep.
Because there's other guys that later on he's saying, oh, stay, don't leave.
Right.
I'll pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he was doing. Drop on a picture of the guy from Popeye. I'll pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. Okay, so the Big Show, we have some context here, is being put with The Undertaker as a tag team to advance his learning and understanding. And the hope is that some of The Undertaker's dedication will rub off on him, similar to a decade ago when they put Lex Luger with the Four Horsemen, hoping that Ric Flair would rub off on Lex. That didn't work. And now it's going to be up to Paul White if it works this time. White's legit body weight is in the 440 range. They won him at 400. He's peaked at about 500 pounds with WCW. And if you want to know why The Rock's on the microphone saying big slow and all that, this is legitimate, them trying to shame him into eating less and getting on the treadmill.
That's insane. That's a big man.
Yes. Steve Austin missed matches this weekend due to a badly bruised shin that was bloodied up. On television, they portrayed this as a knee injury when Austin was given a low blow by China and fell off the ropes. It actually happened after television on 7/27. That was the taping, not the Raw after Fully Loaded, but the week after. That was, they taped the next week's Raw on Tuesday back then. And so that was that big pull apart.
Yeah, that's the one where they went off the air with The Rock just giving Rock bottoms while Triple H and Austin were brawling on the outside.
Exactly. So there was a spot where they were supposed to go through the table. The table didn't break. Austin's shin was cut up and badly bruised. The x-ray showed no break. At first, he wasn't expected back until SummerSlam. The word at press time here is that he's expected back on the August 6th show at the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. Spoiler alert, we'll get there. He does not perform on the Raw we're about to review. The Rock was given time off on the 7/29 show in Baltimore. And then with Austin also missing that, they called in Mick Foley to work a 6-man main event. Reports are here that he clearly wasn't ready to be back in the ring and probably won't be wrestling until after SummerSlam. Poor Mick. Poor Mick. They offered refunds at all the shows that Austin wasn't at, though. And they posted signs outside of the building. So while they don't fully stop deceptive advertising, good on them for this one. You got to give credit where it's due.
Yeah, actually, I can give them credit for that. If you're going to offer up refunds, especially at this point in time where they're making the most money they've ever made in their careers, and they're going to offer up refunds, that's surprising. I'm really
and they still got Mick to be a replacement, which is a big deal, but didn't bank on the crowds just being happy for that. Like they're recognizing that Austin's moving stuff right here.
yeah. The plan is that Vince McMahon won't be back on television for the foreseeable future. WWF is going public, and we're going to talk about that on our SmackDown episode. That is coming up at the end of the month, so 3 weeks from now, so stay tuned for that. So because of that, Vince is not expected to be at every single taping. Kurt Angle's debut is being delayed until October or November because they don't want him exposed nationally before he's ready. The reason that Kane looks so much lighter is because he's dropped about 40 pounds from 320 to a legit 280. His work has improved a lot with the loss of weight. We talk about this all the time here. In 99, Kane is chiseled, and he is working his ass off in these matches.
He's great. He's great, man. He really is.
Yeah, for real. Mark Henry's TV angle is pretty much a shoot, as he isn't going to be given any role until he gets down to 350 from 400 pounds. Henry hinted at wanting to train for the 2000 Olympics in weightlifting, but the WWF told him that they wanted him as a wrestler and not to sponsor him for the Olympics. It appears Al Snow is phasing out Head as his mascot in favor of Pepper.
Poor Pepper.
Poor Pepper.
Gone too soon. Spoiler alert.
And finally, there is a decent chance that when Deborah and Jarrett are broken up, that Jarrett will be moved down the card or receive less TV time. But we have...
You know what time it is.
You know what time it is. We got heat. Give us another heat report before we get into our main event.
You got it, man. Before I do, though, I do want to say how frustrated is Vince McMahon that they have 2 10-year guaranteed contracts out, and they are to Mark Henry and the Big Show.
Yeah. Yeah. He must be
like, oh, I couldn't imagine. So Heat on August 8th, 1999. Really quick report here. Jeff Jarrett and Deborah, they're in shambles right now. He's blaming her for all of his problems. So we have an impending breakup happening. As John alluded to, Al Snow has now lost Head, but gained Pepper. So that is his new mascot guy gimmick. The title match with him and the Boss Man is set for SummerSlam, and we'll get into Pepper later on. Yeah. I'm sure that we will.
We will.
The Acolytes went to a no finish with Kane and Hardcore Holly in a tag team match. And The Undertaker pinned Billy Gunn in the main event here after some Rock assistance. And the show closed as The Rock went after Bear in the Big Show. Taker then stops and beats down The Rock. So we're here, brother. Let's do it.
We are here at the August 9th Raw is War. And as soon as the show starts, as soon as that signature ends, we get the countdown to the millennium, and it says 1 hour and 25 minutes.
I love this start, dude. This had Big Show feel right out of the gate. It really did. Like you knew something big was going to pop off here.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that when we were talking about pre-show is like, you are so 100% correct. This was completely different from any Raw that we've been reviewing or talking about within the last 4 months here on the show about 99.
This show felt as close to the Nitro at the Georgia Dome where Goldberg beats Hogan. Like that's sort of how that felt. Do you know what I mean? Like one of those marquee shows.
Yes, it really did. So we are live from Chicago, Illinois, and there's 13 days until SummerSlam, and The Rock's music hits, and he's coming down to the ring. The camera cuts to the Ministry waiting to go out and attack The Rock. They're waiting at the curtain, which was a really cool little shot that they gave there. The Rock calls out the Big Show for what he did on Heat the night prior, which we just talked about. He calls the Big Show, well, it's a big slow. And he says that when his fans see the Big Show, they were like, oh, this guy, I'm going to take a leak. This guy sucks.
I wrote the quote that Undertaker says the Big Show. Wait a minute, big man. Let's wait a minute to see what he has to say.
Let's let him entertain us.
And so he says, don't go out there so that The Rock could be like, you're a big fat fatty that sucks. And people go to pee when you come out to the ring.
Yeah.
Holy, what a burial here. That had to come straight from Vince, dude, because this was brutal.
Oh, it was. The Ministry comes out and beat down The Rock, but X-Pac comes in for the save. It's short-lived as X-Pac gets beat down, but then we get a Road Dogg run in, and he gets the same treatment. Kane runs in, cleans house, and takes out the Big Show and Undertaker. The King announces that Jesse the Body Ventura is here, and we get a limo pulling up backstage. They open the door, and it's Commissioner Shawn Michaels.
Dude, tell me anywhere I'd rather be in the world than an arena with HBK and Governor Ventura in the same place.
If you could pick heaven, that would be your first two entrants into heaven with you.
It would be. It would be. If heaven ain't a lot like the Rosemont, I don't want to go.
X-Pac and Kane are backstage with Michael Cole, and he says that they have unfinished business. X-Pac says that they started with The Undertaker and Big Show, and they're going to end it with a tag title match with the Acolytes.
And we stay tangled in this Bradshaw web.
We do, man. We can't get away from him and Bob Holly.
We can't shake him, dude.
But Christian struts that ass down to the ring for a match with Gangrel. This match was totally fine. Christian did some high spots on the outside. The Hardys came to ringside. They distracted Christian. Gangrel misted Christian with the blood, and the Hardys ran in to attack Christian after the match. Edge ran in for the save, but he was attacked by all three of them. But then we are graced with P.S. Hayes in the going out shirt. But those bastard Hardys turned on P.S. Hayes.
Raid in their closet. That's why. It was frustration.
The old man stealing their swag.
Mm-hmm.
The Acolytes backstage accept the challenge for the tag titles, and Ventura is being escorted to the ring, and we go to commercial. We come back from commercial, and Jesse gets a pop, a big pop here. He says that he's the only person in Minnesota who can provide law and order at SummerSlam. He mentions Steve Austin and Triple H ahead of their big match and calls Vince a scumbag.
Nailed it. Also, dude, he crushed fake Navy SEALs here. This all being a big Hogan dig, by the way, because he literally saying, I was a Navy SEAL. I didn't just play one on TV, and I'm not one of those fake Navy SEAls with a Bozo the Clown haircut. Like, just pissed all over the Hulkster here.
Yes. We get Triple H interrupting, and he heads down to confront Jesse.
Dude, Jesse just talking over my time while Hunter's trying to walk out to this big superstar entrance as if he's just on a headset calling the match. I died. And also, dude, this Triple H outfit, this leather Harley Davidson Gatsby cap with a black tee and straight cut denim and boots. Oh gosh, this is peak.
Oh, I love a leather Kangol. He's the only person that has made a leather Kangol awesome.
Yes.
Jesse starts with giving advice to Hunter, and he tells him to brush up on his wrestling moves because the best wrestler will win. Triple H says that he wants to kick Jesse's ass, and he will, but the commissioner, Shawn Michaels, comes down to restore law and order in the ring.
Man, Shawn's in outer space here.
Yeah.
Like, he walked out, and right away I was like, uh-oh. And they like zoomed in on him whenever he's walking up the steps, and he's all glassy-eyed, and he gets on the microphone, and he can't even say World Wrestling Federation correctly. And dude, he's entertaining as hell. Like, the promos that he was in got over, and I thought he was effective. But if you know, you know. And especially knowing at this point in time, this is a little hard to watch, man.
It is. Yeah, you're right. Shawn says Jesse has standards and practices that he has to abide by, but Michaels does not. But come SummerSlam, Jesse will be the most powerful ref in WWF history. Michaels announces that Hunter, Taker, and Austin will be in a triple threat match tonight. We get a SmackDown commercial, and again, we're going to be covering that here at the end of the month. So 3 more weeks, you'll be getting that first SmackDown show. D'Lo and Mark Henry are training when Jeff Jarrett pulls up because Mark Henry has to take a leak, and Jeff Jarrett beats up D'Lo in a park.
Dude, A, more fat guy humiliation. So, like, show Mark Henry running and not being allowed to be in a ring because he's overweight. And B, there was a drive-by tree shot. And I went into orbit, dude. He rolled up in a car, threw D'Lo into a tree, and bailed.
So
They're just exercising outside, man. They're getting vitamin D. They're breathing fresh air. They're touching grass. And Jeff Jarrett pulls up beside him, throws him into a tree, and then gets out of there.
You're never safe in the World Wrestling Federation.
Absolutely.
Jarrett's music hits and they make their way to the ring to face Val Venus. Jarrett attacks from behind immediately and goes to work on Val. We want Puppy's chants rain from the crowd.
Dude, the crowds in 99 are the best and the worst. And it's often in the same show. And then at times it's even in the same segment where I'm like, God, this crowd's great. And then I'm just like, oh, this crowd's so gross. Like, whatever.
Deborah tried to distract Val on the apron, but Val countered Jarrett with a sit-out powerbomb and gets the win, and Jarrett is pissed at Deborah. The camera cuts backstage to Slaughter's bald head. He's standing over a laid-out Stone Cold in the stairwell because he's been attacked.
What if Austin was laying on the ground holding his eyes because the reflection off of Slaughter's head burned his retinas?
Dude, when they choose that shot down, it's just, you just see Slaughter's head. That thing is funny. So we come back from commercial and Michael Cole is giving us a medical update on Austin and he says he's unconscious. Hunter walks up and Michaels blames Triple H for what happened to Austin.
Dude, Sean's suddenly shirtless. Like he has a blazer on still, but there's no shirt underneath it. And I thought that was something, man. I thought that was wonderful.
I wish I could pull that same look off.
Yes.
But Michaels immediately comes down to the ring. Sean says there's no way that Hunter isn't getting away with attacking Austin. Hunter says he has nothing to do with it. Michaels changes the triple threat to a false count anywhere between Undertaker, Triple H for the #1 contendership for the title at SummerSlam, and Michaels is going to be the special guest referee. Michaels also adds Chyna to make the match, and Triple H says that she's just a woman and she has no business in this. Chyna grabs the mic and takes on the challenge. So our main event now is Triple H versus Chyna versus Undertaker for the #1 contendership for the WWF title.
Yeah, I thought this segment was great. The back and forth between the two was awesome. And then Chyna's face, her facial sell when Triple H said she's just a woman was freaking awesome. Like I thought this was great.
Yeah, it was really good. So we go backstage with Triple H trying to save face with Chyna, but it's time for our tag team title match with X-Pac and Kane versus the Acolytes. So we're back in this Bradshaw prison.
Yep.
Bradshaw and Kane hook it up first, but then Farouk eventually takes over on X-Pac. X-Pac is beaten on for a while. Kane finally got the hot tag and the crowd erupted. Kane went for the choke slam and he got a huge reaction. He's cut off though, and he's thrown out of the ring. X-Pac is thrown to the mat by his hair. Kane pulls Bradshaw out by his boots to the outside. X-Pac hits an X Factor on Farouk, and we got new tag team champions. The crowd was literally going banana for this. But that is not the end. We get a DX breakdown post-match where Kane says his first words, "Suck it." Undertaker and Big Show run in and attack, and they beat down our new tag team champions.
So while this was going on, the only thing that I literally kept thinking about was how irritated I was that Kane was never in green.
Yeah.
But I absolutely believe that they just like Mandela that away, because I knew that he was in green. until they said that he wasn't. I even went and re-looked this up while this was going on. And Glenn Jacobs literally does an interview and is quoted saying, not only did it never happen, it was never considered. And I still believe. Like, it's the weirdest thing ever.
That's not true. Because I believe X-Pac said that they had the idea of him wearing green at some point. Hence the whole blue cane thing that happened in GCW for a little bit there.
Brother, I'm just telling you. I don't know. I'm telling you, they Mandela this away, dude. They memory hold it. They butterfly affected it. They did something. Because I thought that this happened and I was just irritated the whole time. It's sort of, I didn't really watch this match because I was Googling that the whole time.
Well, our next match is a 4-way with Joey Abs, Steve Blackman, Ken Shamrock, and Test. We also have Shane on commentary.
Dude, Joey Abs and Steve Blackman is my third favorite tag team of all time. Right behind the Young Bucks and Two Dudes with Attitudes. We have a dude from Anvil and Joey Abs, and I loved it, dude. I also wrote, Shane's jacket swallowed half of his shirt collar, and it's bothering me. Why isn't it bothering him?
Test hits a gut-wrench powerbomb on Abs in the ring, and Shamrock destroyed Shane with a kendo stick. Like, absolutely beat the tar out of him with that thing. Test hit a powerbomb again and wins the match with Shamrock and Blackman fighting into the crowd. Test then Pillmanizes Abs' ankle twice while Shane watched from the stage. Next, Billy Gunn has poison ivy on his ass cheeks.
Dude, this was the eye roll of the year here.
Yeah.
Afterwards, when I was reading the Observer report, Meltzer wrote something to the effect of, Billy Gunn got salad rubbed on his butt, but it was actually poison oak. And I laughed really hard because he called it salad.
So we cut back and The Rock makes his way to the ring as we go to commercial.
Dude, this wasn't just a commercial. This was a commercial for a JVC Kaboom box. Dual subwoofers on your boom box. It's so 1999. I can't even deal with it. Dude, for Christmas, when I was in 8th grade, I literally just got a stereo so that I could just pound bass while I was playing PlayStation 1 while the bros came over during the summer.
Yep. I know that feeling, man. That's nostalgia feels right there.
So good.
So we come back and Test is with Michael Cole, and he says that he just wants him and Steph to be left alone. We jump to Terry Taylor, who's with Steve Blackman, and he says that he will step into the Lion's Den, and then he just screams into the mic for no fucking reason.
Brother, he is staring needles into the eyes of the Red Rooster while screaming at Ken Shamrock as if Ken Shamrock was the man standing across from him. I almost fainted while this was going on. He's staring dead into Terry Taylor's eyes, saying, Ken Shamrock, blah, blah, blah. He's not talking into the camera. He's staring right at Terry Taylor. Terry Taylor, dude, when this got done, probably needed to take a shot of tequila or something.
Yeah.
Just calm the nerves, say, oh, okay, this is over.
He probably thought he was getting his ass kicked by Blackman right after that.
I thought that Blackman was going to start attacking right there.
But here we are. We're at the big moment. The Rock makes his way to the ring. He calls out the Big Show, and he says he's going to check his fat ass right into the SmackDown hotel. And then the countdown comes up onto the screen, and it counts down to 0. We get a little bit of a light show. The lights go out. Big pyro pop. We get the music. And then Jericho flips up onto the screen. And Raw is Jericho. Jericho is officially in the WWE. And it's one of the biggest reactions you will ever see in wrestling history.
This was absolutely awesome. And according to JR, the Millennium Countdown and this intro were all Jericho's idea. Yes. And apparently this was the company carrying favor with him because he was coming off that WCW run where his good ideas were either shut down or snuffed out before they could really take off. And this was their way to say, okay, brother, let's see what you could do.
And that's actually a really interesting point that you made there, because Jericho has talked about this before, where he was standing in a post office and they had that countdown to the millennium thing in the post office. And he was like, that'd be a great idea for somebody to debut at WWF with. And he's like, oh, why don't I debut with that in WWF? And he literally took it to JR immediately. And that's where the Millennium Man was formed.
And J rhymes with K. It's perfect.
It is perfect, actually. Y2J is
Yes, it's perfect.
perfect. Yes, literally a match made in heaven. So Jericho says he's the new millennium for the World Wrestling Federation, and he is your new hero and most charismatic.
The quote was, your new hero, your party host, the most charismatic showman to ever enter your living rooms. I thought it was great. I had to write that down word for word, man.
Yeah. But my favorite is when he says he's the Ayatollah of a rock and a roller. I love that. That's one of my favorite Jericho sayings outside of Ass Clown, but that doesn't come till later. So we'll cover that in our 2004 shows.
Yep.
Well, The Rock is standing in the ring and the crowd is chanting Rocky. Jericho says he's come to save the WWF. He says The Rock is an idiot and that Jericho is excellence. The Rock raises the mic to his face, says after 3 boring minutes, The Rock says, know your role and shut your mouth. He calls Jericho a jabroni, and how could he not have enough class to introduce himself? Jericho goes to say his name, and The Rock cuts him off with, it doesn't matter what your name is. The Rock says Jericho has the Y2J plan, but The Rock has the KY jelly plan. He's going to lube up his 13-inch boot, shove it sideways, and stick it straight up Jericho's ass. And this was so good. What a debut. Let us know in the comments what you think about this debut, because it's by far the greatest debut, I think, of all time ever.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. And normally, like, sort of to differentiate ourselves, we try to do these time capsule shows. This is where we are. This is what's being reporting. But because of this being such an epic moment, I did want to give a little bit of contemporary context. So JR said on his podcast, whenever he and Conrad had covered this recently, that not only was the countdown Jericho's idea, but they threw him into the fire right away with The Rock, and he immediately looked, felt, and acted like he belonged. He said that Brian Gewirtz produced The Rock's dialogue here, and as absolutely molten over as The Rock was, Jericho stood toe-to-toe with him in a long promo segment where others would have been intimidated and probably faltered in that moment. And especially when they start chanting Rocky, like The Rock's such a star and Jericho doesn't waver, dude. He just sinks his teeth into it further, digs in, and is just being just whiny heel. And also, dude, I remember him saying that there was heat on him at that time from that promo.
Even whenever he was on that Broken Skull Sessions a few years ago, he said, what I didn't realize, once again, I'm just playing a character on a show, calling everybody amateurs and boring. And you could probably say it from your side. I got a lot of heat from the dressing room, from the locker room for that as well. And because what people don't understand is that the Monday Night Wars, like, they were real. It was real to them. There's a division. It's like AEW versus WWE. So by saying that kind of stuff, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to get so much heat for saying these things and everything I've said. But you take that out of the equation, though, like this is really awesome. So after Jericho's debut and after all of the stuff that we've talked about tonight, just when you thought we weren't going to mention him, Big Shot Bob is backstage looking for the Big Show as we head to commercial.
Dude, I couldn't have sighed harder here. Like, because I'm still a Bob Holly guy at this point in time, but I'm like, dude, what a juxtaposition that we go from The Rock and Jericho to, hey, where is he? Where's he at? I'm going to find him, coming back here. So Meltzer said about that Jericho debut segment, quote, The Rock did an interview challenging the Big Show when the clock appeared on the screen. As the time for the millennium came, out popped Jericho, who gave an interview with the same lines he used in WCW. He did a very good heel interview talking about the WWF, almost as a metaphor for WCW being boring on TV, etc. Rock's comeback was awesome. While it was good to link Jericho with The Rock right away because it puts him with top guys, because Rock has so much presence, by the time it was over, Rock had largely overshadowed Jericho's debut. And I can see where he's coming from there, but I also absolutely get management being like, brother, sink or swim, let's go. And I thought that it was awesome and the right place, right time, and right person.
Yeah, totally agree. So coming back from commercial, we got Bob Holly running around looking for the Big Show saying, have you seen the Big Show? You tell him the Big Shot's looking for him. So our next match is the Boss Man versus Road Dogg in a hardcore match. This is not for the hardcore title. Dog hits Boss Man with a cookie sheet and he sets up a table in the ring. Boss Man hammers Dog with a chair and then sends him through the table. Al Snow comes down to the ring, hits Boss Man over the head with a pet crate, and the Boss Man falls. Road Dogg rolls him up for the pin and wins the match.
So they're selling here the peppers in the crate, right?
Yeah. The problem is the gate blew off whenever he hit Boss Man with it.
Yes. And it's terrible. And it's only going to get more vile. So not only do you have a fake dog in a crate that is exposed whenever the lid comes off and no dog runs out, but I hope Al's hungry.
He's gonna be full here soon. The Big Show and The Rock are making their way to the ring for their match next. The Rock sends Show into the turnbuckles and gives him a Russian leg sweep. Show is able to stop The Rock with a few headbutts and chokes in the corner with the high boot. Rock fought back and he was hit with another high boot though. Big Bob Holly makes his way to the ring. He gets up on the apron and is headbutted by Show. The Rock gives Big Show a low blow, hits the DDT, and gives the people's elbow, but Jericho distracted The Rock. But Billy Gunn runs in and gives The Rock a jackhammer here. There's a lot of shit going on in this match.
Right. But not only do you get the promo battle with The Rock, the follow-up with the run-in, I thought was awesome, dude. The only thing that I didn't like, and this was me transporting myself 25 years ago, was that at that time, I seriously thought that I was going to get Jericho and The Rock at SummerSlam.
Right. And
it's the only thing that I didn't like about it was that it was his test, almost like his, hey, go work with Waltman match to see if you can go, except it was on The Rock with the microphone. And that was the only thing I didn't like, was that the tease was, oh my gosh, we're going to get this. And we didn't.
Right. So the main event is the triple threat with Triple H, China, and The Undertaker. Falls count anywhere. Number one contender is on the line. We get Jesse ringside, and the cherry on top is Commissioner Michaels as special guest referee.
And in those shorts with the Shawn Michaels Academy shirt. And every time he moved his hair and pointed to the phone number on the back, I laughed really hard.
Yeah.
So Dave said the idea of Ventura, Ross, and Lawler together on commentary had more than a few ironies. Lawler in Ventura's old announcing spot following Ventura's lead as a political candidate for one, and the fact that there's been very bad blood with Ross and Ventura for years is another.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, a little bit of heat ski.
Taker pushes China out of the way immediately, and Taker and Hunter hook up. Taker put China up in a double arm chokeslam, but China raked the eyes. China hopped up on the top rope, but she was hit by Taker to the outside. Hunter and Taker fight up the ramp and ringside. Hunter threw Taker back into the ring, went off the top rope, but Undertaker caught him with a chokeslam, but China slid in and took out Undertaker's knee, and Hunter and China beat down Taker together. China tries to truce with Hunter, but it was a ruse. She clotheslines Hunter, but Taker is waiting to give her a chokeslam. He ever so gingerly laid China down on the mat, so good on Taker for not going out there and absolutely trying to kill her.
Well, so the crowd booed that bad. Like when he laid her down, the boo birds came. They wanted to see her explode. But since we're talking Jericho here, it reminds me of this interview that he did where he said that working with China was an absolute nightmare because that's one of his first big programs. And he said that Vince told him to work her like a man, and they're in this match and he like potatoes her or something. I don't remember if he caught her in the eye or the nose or what. And he just got eviscerated for it then. So Vince is like, hey, go out there, work her like a man, treat her like this and that. And then he actually works and then ends up, things happen in the ring. And so then they're like, why would you do that to a woman? Blah, blah, blah. What's your problem? And so I thought the funny thing with this is that it's a no-win situation. And even though Big Evil might be dead, he still has a heart. And if that wasn't the case, he at least had enough sway that Vince wouldn't kill his push for not slamming China down too hard. So this was totally a Callaway's good move.
Yeah. So Triple H goes for the pin on China, but it's broken up by Taker. Taker and Hunter go blow for blow in the ring. The camera cuts backstage, and Austin is back, and he's carrying a chair to the ring. Hunter and China are sent ringside as the crowd chants for Austin. Austin comes down and absolutely kills Hunter with a chair shot. Taker retreated back into the ring. Austin picks up China, lays her on top of Hunter, and Shawn counts to 3 for the pin. China is your new number 1 contender.
Dude, Taker standing there and watching this all and not moving was just really weird. like he just gave angry face while the 9th wonder of the world is being the number 1 contender. Like chair shot, all that. And he's just standing there scowling. And I was like, what are you doing, dude? Like, this is no DQ anything. Like, yeah, he could have threw a ninja star at her while she was making the cover or shot flames out of his hands or something. He's the dead man.
Yeah, he just stood there. He literally just stood there and watched it. And then he got pissed off, I guess, at Austin. But he was the one that just stood there and let it happen.
Yeah, that was strange. So for the follow-up with the WWF featuring a live appearance by Jesse Ventura, the debut of Chris Jericho, and WCW countering by advertising a performance by Chad Brock. This is Dave's words. I don't even know what Chad Brock is. If anything, the final tally in the August 9th ratings, roughly the usual, was unremarkable. Raw, which more than doubled Nitro in 6 of the 8 quarters, did a 6.36 rating, so a 6.21 first hour, 6.49 second hour, and a 10.2 share. Nitro actually did a 3.11 with a 3.67 first, 2.81 second, and 2.89 third hour, and had a 5.1 share. Over the head-to-head 2 hours and 6 minutes, Raw did a 6.32 compared to Nitro's 2.85. And that's the big thing here, is that because Nitro's 3 hours, that 8 o'clock hour sort of doesn't count. You know, Raw's like tripling them basically whenever it comes head to head. So the biggest ratings gap and largest audience head to head of the show was for the angle featuring Ventura, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H, which did a 6.87, nearly tripling the 2.25 WCW did with its best actual wrestling match on the show with Mysterio and Eddie versus Chris Adams and David Taylor. The debut of Chris Jericho did a 6.53 rating, beating the Triad interview and Canyon versus Booker T, which did a 2.37.
And speaking of the Jersey Triad, Meltzer wrote, there's an interesting backstory with DDP and Y2J. He said DDP told Bischoff he could convince Jericho to sign, and when Jericho left, DDP buried Jericho on his website, saying he was never a main eventer and never drew a buy rate. Jericho then retaliated on his website, saying everyone is sick of seeing DDP on TV, and then these two happened to be head-to-head in Jericho's debut segment.
And the bad thing is the WWF is going to cripple him no matter what. But, man, he probably had to go home and feel good about that one.
Yeah, definitely. So that is our Raw is Jericho episode. We hope you all enjoyed it because we had a lot of fun recording it. And I'm super excited because next week is SummerSlam 2004. We're back to 2004. We're going to follow that up with SummerSlam 99. So everything we talked about here today will carry over to that show 2 weeks from now. And everything that we talked about last week on that Iron Man match is going to carry over to next week's show. So we got a lot coming up here for you on the Podski. We have the Scott Hall episode coming up very soon as well. So keep subscribing. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this show. And we will see you next time on the Podski.